Good evening, dear listener. Settle comfortably into your cozy nook. Perhaps adjust that blanket wrapped around your shoulders. Take a slow, calming breath and let your eyes gently drift shut. Imagine the soft glow of a candle flickering nearby, its warm light flickering like a whisper in the quiet night. Maybe sip a soothing cup of tea, the steam curling lazily into the air, or rest your head softly against your pillow, feeling the gentle weight of the world melt away. Tonight, we venture into a world where even the simplest of things carry the weight of legends, where the sleek, shiny object you hold is not just a marvel of modern craft, but something that might have been forged in the icy fires of distant Norse shores. Picture a vessel not made of wood and iron, but of glass and metal, whispering secrets like ancient runes, yet somehow also whispering notifications, pings and alerts that never quite stop. As shadows deepen and the night wind hums softly outside your window, a curious thought whispers through the quiet. What if a Viking, with his fierce beard and battle axe, were to gaze upon this strange glowing device? Would he see a treasure, a weapon, or perhaps an enchanted talisman from a world beyond his longship? And as your eyelids grow heavier, you'll soon find yourself awakening, not in your familiar room, but in a place where the air is thick with mystery, where shadows dance like fleeting memories, and your journey into the unknown is just beginning. Rest now, for tomorrow's story awaits, filled with wonder and a touch of ironies yet to be revealed. The air is thick with a mixture of scents, faintly sweet but mostly pungent, of smoke curling from a nearby fire, the sour tang of sweat clinging to cloth, and the sharp aroma of burning herbs that linger like ghostly whispers in the corners of the room. You notice that the mattress, if you can call it that, is lumpy and uneven, providing little comfort as you try to find a better position. The smell of damp wool and old leather fills your nostrils, mixing with the faint, acrid sting of ash and a faint hint of something rotten, perhaps spoiled meat left too long on the table. Your hand gropes outward, searching for your blanket, rough spun wool woven with coarse threads that scratch against your fingertips, and as you pull it over your shoulders, you realize how unyielding and itchy it is, a stark contrast to the soft, feathered comfort of your modern bedding. The texture of the rough fabric feels almost like a punishment, yet somehow it's familiar in this strange, ancient space. You might chuckle at the thought. Your idea of a bad morning used to be forgetting your phone charger, and here it's realizing your blanket smells worse than the pigsty outside. As you sit up, the room creaks and shifts beneath you. The wooden beams overhead groan softly, as if complaining about the weight of the night. A faint breeze drifts through a small, jagged window, bringing with it the distant sounds of a bustling village, clattering of metal, the faint murmur of voices, the occasional shout or laughter carried across the air like a familiar song from an unfamiliar land. You hear the soft jingling of cattle and goats wandering through the streets, their bells tinkling like tiny, impatient reminders that life continues outside your fragile refuge. Your ears catch the distant, rhythmic clanging of the blacksmith's hammer, an earthy, repetitive beat that resonates deep within your chest. Somewhere nearby, a child's giggle pierces the air, bright and sharp, contrasting with the murmurs of elders exchanging news and gossip. The townspeople go about their morning routines with a kind of relentless rhythm, boots stomping on cobblestones, the scrape of wooden carts over uneven ground, the shouts of merchants hawking their wares. You notice a soldier passing by, his armor dull and battered, giving you a once-over that feels both curious and cautious, as if your presence is a strange, rare visitor. The scent of smoke and sweat mingles with the aroma of baked bread and roasted meats wafting from a nearby market stall, an olfactory symphony that makes your stomach rumble in protest. You could almost taste the flavors, the hearty bread, the salty, greasy fish, though the sensation is dulled by the air, thick with the smell of damp earth and burning wood. Touching the rough, coarse fabric of your clothing, you feel the stiff, unforgiving texture of animal hides and woven linen, not the soft, smooth fabrics of your modern life. The cold bites at your skin, especially your fingers and toes, reminding you that warmth is a luxury here, something you'd have to work for rather than a given. Now take a moment and consider how strange this all feels. Your modern life, with its endless stream of notifications and silent, invisible connections, seems worlds away from this raw, visceral existence. Your idea of a frustrating morning used to be your Wi-Fi dropping out or your smartphone dying at the worst moment. Here, it's the chill that seeps into your bones despite the thickest layers, or the discomfort of rough-spun clothing scratching your skin like 1,000 tiny claws. Yet amid the chaos and dirt, there's a certain honesty, an authenticity that makes you smile, if only faintly, at how far removed your world truly is. You rise slowly from your rough bed, feeling the uneven floor beneath your bare feet, cold, hard, and splintered with age, and you reach instinctively for your clothing. The garments are coarse and heavy, woven from animal hair and thick linen, stiff and unyielding against your skin. As you pull them over your head, you notice the weight of history in each rough seam, in every stitch that holds the fabric together. You tighten a simple leather belt around your waist, feeling the roughness of the hide against your palm, and prepare to step outside. Pushing open a heavy wooden door, you are greeted by the sights of a small village waking to the day. The street is a tangled trail of uneven stones, mud, and dirt, worn smooth by countless feet. The houses around you are simple structures, wooden walls, thatched roofs, and windows that are just small, dark openings, some with animal pelts hung to dry, others with smoke curling out from their chimneys. The people move with purpose, some tending to livestock, others setting up market stalls, children darting between legs with carefree laughter. Their clothing is rough, functional, and often patched, their faces marked by dirt, sun, and hard work. Everyone seems to acknowledge your presence with a mixture of curiosity and respect. The villagers glance at you with the kind of guarded interest that suggests they are used to strangers, but perhaps not one dressed like a traveler from another world. The local healer, with her hands stained with herbs, gives you a quick, assessing look, while a burly blacksmith nods at you, a hint of a grin beneath his soot-streaked face. In this moment, you realize that to truly understand this place, you need to step back and see the bigger picture. The everyday life, the routines, the sights and sounds, they all form part of a much larger story. The world you've just awakened in is woven into a tapestry of legends, survival, and a relentless connection to nature and tradition. To grasp the depth of this existence, you must first see beyond the surface, beyond the dirt and the dirt-poor houses, and understand the forces that shape such a life. And as your senses adjust to this unfamiliar and yet strangely familiar world, you begin to see that you've only just arrived. There's so much more to explore, to uncover, to understand. But for now, take a deep breath, inhale the scent of earth and smoke, and prepare to step further into the story that awaits, because this is only the beginning of your journey into a time filled with shadows, stories, and secrets waiting to be revealed. As you slowly awaken, your mind drifts to the distant past, specifically to a place and era where the land is shaped by fierce warriors, sprawling villages, and a society built on the strength of arms and the faith in gods whose names are carved into every stone and every prayer. You are, perhaps, in the early 11th century, within the shadow of the Viking Age, an era when Norse ships with dragon-headed prows cut through icy fjords and turbulent seas, bringing both terror and trade to the coasts of Europe. It's a time when the world seems both wild and ordered, a delicate balance of chaos and control, where the horizon is often lined with the smoke of fires and the distant clang of blacksmiths hammering away at their anvils. Imagine a landscape dotted with longhouses, their thatched roofs sagging under the weight of rain, nestled among fields of barley and flax, and surrounded by a patchwork of muddy roads and dense forests. The whole scene feels alive, as if the earth itself breathes stories of conquest and survival. A river winds sluggishly through the land, its banks bustling with traders and fishermen, while on the horizon mighty castles and stone churches begin to rise, symbols of authority and faith, yet still surrounded by the dirt and dirtiness of daily life. Living here, your days are dictated by the rising and setting of the sun, the crowing of roosters, and the tolling of simple iron bells. No digital alarms, only the natural rhythm of nature and tradition. The mornings start early, with people waking to the sound of horns and the calls of farmers tending their fields or smiths preparing their fires. Your routine might involve chopping wood, herding livestock, or ploughing fields with oxen. An unromantic yet vital work, reminiscent of a never-ending cycle that keeps the community alive. Taking a bath? Well, that was a suspicious activity, almost akin to announcing to the neighbors that you were planning something shady, so most people settled for a quick rinse in a basin or a splash from a cold river, especially if they wanted to avoid the suspicion of the village elders. And oh, the food. Imagine the taste of coarse bread baked over an open fire, or a chunk of dried salted fish, chewy and salty enough to make your mouth water or rebel. Drinking was often just water from a muddy well, sometimes flavored with a splash of mead or ale, offered in rough clay cups that felt more like ancient artifacts than vessels. The smell of burnt wood, fresh bread, and the ever-present aroma of sweat and dirt fill the air, creating a sensory landscape that's both gritty and surprisingly vibrant. Touching the rough woolen fabrics of your clothes, you'd feel the coarse fibers biting into your skin, a stark contrast to the soft, seamless fabrics you might know today. The cold can be relentless, biting through layers of animal pelts and linen, turning your fingers numb and making every task an exercise in endurance. Now picture the surrounding world, villages clustered along coastlines or nestled in the shadow of towering fjords, each with its own stories and struggles. The bustling marketplaces are noisier than Black Friday, yet with more animals than people, as pigs, chickens, and sheep wander freely among the haggling merchants and eager buyers. The streets are muddy and rutted, filled with the sounds of carts creaking over cobblestones and children's laughter mingling with the shouts of traders. Everywhere you see life, sometimes chaotic, often harsh, but always resilient. The society itself is a complex web of hierarchies. Nobles and chieftains sit atop the social ladder, their wealth measured in land, ships, and the number of their warriors. Below them, free farmers and artisans scratch out a living, their lives governed by tradition and the whims of destiny. The lowest classes, slaves and bondservants, toil in silence, their fate often left to chance or the mercy of their masters. Power is held by those who wield the sword and the tongue, with kings and jarls claiming divine right, yet constantly challenged by rival clans and ambitious warriors. Honor and loyalty reign supreme, but so does cunning. survival often depends as much on wit as strength, especially when disputes are settled over the edge of a blade or a carefully negotiated peace treaty. And then there are the grand structures, churches with their towering wooden spires and intricate carvings, standing as both spiritual centers and symbols of authority. The religion here is a tapestry of Norse gods, Odin, Thor, Freya, and superstitions that influence every aspect of life. Tales of gods and monsters fill the nights, shaping the collective imagination with stories of valor, betrayal, and cosmic battles. Superstitions abound. Some believe that carrying a sprig of mistletoe could ward off evil, while others swear that wearing a wolf's tooth would make them invincible. Some villagers take great care to avoid walking under ladders or to stay indoors during a lunar eclipse, fearing misfortune or worse. Wars and invasions are frequent visitors in this world, clans vying for control, foreign armies seeking to plunder or establish dominance, and sometimes entire regions falling into chaos or being reshaped by conquest. Epidemics like the dreaded plague sweep through villages with terrifying regularity, often leaving behind a trail of death and despair. Yet, amid all this turmoil, religion provides comfort, rituals, sacrifices, and offerings to appease the gods and seek their favor. People believe deeply in fate, in the idea that the gods have already marked their destinies and that the threads of their lives are woven into a grand, cosmic design. Curiously, some people thought that carrying a handful of onions in their pockets could ward off the plague, perhaps a kind of organic medicine, long before the science arrived. Others swore that sniffing flowers soaked in vinegar was safer than keeping distant from the sick. Masks, but make it medieval. Now that you understand the world you've awakened in, a place of raw beauty, brutal hardship, and unyielding faith, it's time to zoom further, to the very core of daily life. Let's turn our gaze inward, to your own body, your home, and the routines that define your existence in this rugged and fascinating land. As your senses stir, you stretch your limbs, feeling the stiffness that comes from a night spent on a hard, uneven surface, perhaps a bed made of woven straw or a simple patchwork of animal pelts. The air around you is cool and thick with the scent of damp wood, lingering smoke from the hearth, and the faint, earthy aroma of dried herbs hung in bundles along the beams. You sit up slowly, your muscles protesting with a dull ache, and reach for a basin, usually a shallow wooden bowl, filled with cold water from the nearby well or river. Your hands dip into the water, which feels startlingly frigid, a shock that awakens your skin more than any modern caffeine jolt. You splash the water onto your face, feeling the sting of the cold bite into your cheeks, your chin, your forehead. No fancy soap or fragrant shower gel here, just plain water, plain effort, and a hope that the smell of yesterday's sweat doesn't offend the noses of your family or neighbors. You might even give your armpits a quick rub with a damp rag or a handful of dried herbs, perhaps sage or juniper, thinking that a little aromatic cleansing will make you feel cleaner, or at least less offensive. In those days, baths were often viewed with suspicion, almost as if they might wash away more than dirt. They could also wash away your luck or invite disease. Many believed that a good airing, standing in the breeze, or simply exposing your body to the fresh air was enough to keep the worst at bay. So, forget your 10-step skincare routine, your lavender-scented body wash, or the endless supply of moisturizers. Here, survival is splashing some water on your face and hoping the smell doesn't scare the neighbors away. Now take a moment to observe your surroundings. Inside your humble dwelling, the walls are dark and rough, made of sturdy logs or wattle and daub, with a faint aroma of burnt wood and lingering smoke from the night's fire. The hearth dominates one corner, a large stone circle where the fire crackles softly, sending tendrils of ash and smoke curling upward, filling the space with a warm, pungent scent. Utensils hang from hooks, clay cups, wooden spoons, iron tongs, and a few battered pots sit on the hearth, their surfaces blackened from years of use. The floor is uneven, made of packed dirt or roughly cut planks creaking softly as you shift your weight. The furniture is sparse, perhaps a small bench carved from wood, a rough table, and a few stools, each worn from years of daily life. The textures are coarse and unrefined, the rough grain of the wooden surfaces, the cold, splintery feel of the stone, the rugged leather of a simple satchel or pair of shoes. The smell of dampness and smoke is constant, occasionally mixed with the faint aroma of dried herbs or animal fat used for cooking or lighting. Your clothing reflects the practical reality of life. Heavy, coarse fabrics like wool and linen, often patched and mended over the years. You wear a thick tunic, perhaps with a rough spun cloak draped over your shoulders, and sturdy leather shoes that feel stiff and unyielding, more a form of protection than comfort. If you examine your body, you notice the inevitable signs of labor: calloused hands, sore muscles, perhaps a few insect bites, or scratches from a day spent outdoors. Your skin is rougher than the smooth, moisturized surface you might be used to from modern life. If you're lucky, your hair is tied back with a leather thong, and your face bears the signs of a day well spent under the open sky: dirt smudges, a streak of ashes, maybe a dab of mud from working the fields. Your idea of uncomfortable clothing might have once been a scratchy sweater or tight jeans, but here it's wool that feels like hugging a hedgehog, coarse, prickly, yet somehow familiar. As you prepare for the day, your stomach reminds you that breakfast is not a leisurely experience, it's a simple affair. You might nibble on a piece of hard, dense bread, its crust thick and chewy, or a slice of aged cheese with a strong, pungent aroma. Perhaps a bowl of thin, brothy porridge, flavored with bits of dried herbs or a splash of leftover meat drippings, provides the only warmth for your insides. Drinking is straightforward: water from a wooden cup, maybe a mug of mead or ale if you're feeling generous, both tasting more like fermented liquid bread than the refined drinks of today. The flavors are earthy, raw, and honest. Nothing refined, nothing processed, just the taste of what's available in this rugged land. Before stepping outside, you might tie an amulet around your neck, perhaps a rune carved from bone, or a small charm made of iron, believed to ward off sickness or evil spirits. Some might mutter a quick prayer, a blessing for health or good fortune, or burn a sprig of juniper or sage in a small brazier to purify the air and your space. Rituals like these are woven into daily life, a mixture of superstition and tradition, as natural and necessary as breathing. After all, here, health and luck are not guaranteed. They're earned through effort, faith, and perhaps a little bit of luck. Now, as you step beyond your door into the world outside, the sounds, smells, and textures of your home fade into the background. You're ready, clothed in rough, warm fabrics, carrying the knowledge that your morning has been a dance of simple rituals, a quiet acknowledgement of the harsh, beautiful life you lead. And yet beneath it all, a faint smile might cross your face, knowing that this daily routine is just one thread in the grand tapestry of your existence, one that's woven from sweat, faith, and the unbreakable will to survive. The ground beneath your feet is a mixture of mud, uneven cobblestones, and scattered straw, each step squelching slightly as the moisture creeps into your boots. The distant murmur of voices rises and falls, a lively chorus of merchants shouting, children laughing, and the rhythmic pounding of hammers from the blacksmith's forge. You carry with you the tools of your trade, a leather satchel filled with dried herbs, a small sharpened dagger, and perhaps a simple mask with a long beak-like nose, a symbolic shield against unseen dangers. As you move through the bustling streets, the chill of the wind bites through your cloak, and you notice the way people's eyes flicker with a mixture of respect and wariness. Children stare at you, half curious, half terrified, perhaps because your presence commands attention, or maybe because they sense the weight of your role in this community. You, in your position, are expected to serve a purpose, whether to heal, to judge, or to maintain order. Your role is clear. You are a healer, a guide, a protector, a figure who must carry the burden of knowledge and superstition alike, often walking a fine line between respect and suspicion. The villagers regard you with a mixture of reverence and fear, knowing that your actions could mean salvation or disaster. Sometimes an old woman whispers a quick prayer when she sees you approach, clutching a charm or a small bundle of herbs. Soldiers glance at you with cautious indifference, their hands resting on the hilts of their swords, ready for trouble, or perhaps just for a quick drink after their patrol. Merchants barter loudly with customers, their voices rising over the clatter of their wares, furs, salted fish, and pottery, while farmers drag carts loaded with produce, their faces streaked with dirt and sweat. You weave through this lively scene, your presence always noticeable, your footsteps echoing on the uneven stones. Your tasks are straightforward but vital, visiting the sick in their homes, examining the bodies of those fallen ill, applying herbs and poultices, and sometimes burning contaminated clothing or belongings to prevent the spread of disease. The smells of burnt herbs, damp earth, and roasted meat fill your senses as you work, each task accompanied by the sounds of coughing, the rustling of cloth, and the faint crackle of fire. The air is thick with the scent of smoke and sweat, with a hint of garlic or juniper to ward off evil spirits, believed to cling to the sick like an unwelcome shadow. Forget your modern office politics. Here, your backlog isn't a pile of emails, but a line of worried villagers waiting outside your door, clutching their loved ones or their own trembling hands, hoping for relief. The tasks you perform are often repetitive but necessary, checking for signs of fever, feeling the pulse of a patient, whispering prayers to the gods, or muttering curses under your breath. You might burn a bundle of herbs, the smoke curling upward like a prayer, rising to the heavens, or carefully pour vinegar over the infected cloth, believing it will purify the air, or at least mask the foul smell. Interactions with the community are a delicate dance. Nobles might send servants to fetch you, expecting you to diagnose and cure with a wave of your hand, or perhaps with a sprinkle of magical herbs. They regard you with a mixture of respect and suspicion, wary of your knowledge and the superstitions that surround your work. Servants and common folk often watch you with wide eyes, whispering to each other about your strange methods. Some think you possess a touch of the divine, others believe you deal with dark spirits. Children, meanwhile, are fascinated by your tools, the twisted herbs, the carved bones, the small charms, often giggling as you handle them. You may exchange a few quick words, offering reassurance or a blessing, your voice a calm anchor in this sea of uncertainty. Sometimes a grizzled old healer or a stern priest watches your work, their expressions a mixture of admiration and skepticism. They might mutter about the dangers of meddling with forces beyond mortal understanding, or about the need for divine intervention over herbal remedies. A fact that might seem unbelievable. Some healers believed that carrying a cane wasn't just for support, no, it was also for poking patients from a safe distance, as if the very act of touching could transfer the sickness. Others thought that smoking dried herbs soaked in vinegar inside a mask with a long beak could keep the disease at bay, almost like medieval aromatherapy designed to ward off evil spirits. The community's rhythm is relentless. Markets bustling with traders bartering their wares, farmers harvesting crops, and ritual processions winding their way through the streets, all with the underlying concern about illness and death always present. Every day is a balancing act between tradition and necessity, between faith and evidence, between life and death. You play your part in this ongoing cycle, your presence a vital thread woven into the fabric of their daily existence. Behind every crowded market stall and every wary glance, there's a deeper fear that shapes this world, an unseen shadow that hangs over every handshake, every prayer, every cough. To understand why the villagers look at you that way, we need to step into their beliefs and superstitions to see how their fears are woven into the very fabric of their spiritual lives. But for now, you carry on your role defined by the needs of this rugged, resilient community, your purpose as clear as the cold steel of your blade, serving, healing, and perhaps, just maybe, holding back the darkness for one more day. You feel it in the way the villagers cast nervous glances over their shoulders, as if the shadows themselves might be whispering secrets of unseen terrors. It's in the way they clutch their rosaries tightly, fingers trembling as they murmur prayers under their breath, their voices just barely rising above a whisper. You notice it in the crowded churches, where the scent of burning candles and incense mingles with the heavy air, filling the space with a smoky, almost suffocating warmth. The bells toll solemnly, marking funeral processions that snake through the streets, each chime a reminder that death is always nearby, lurking like a predator waiting in the darkness. The silence in the narrow alleyways is thick, almost oppressive, broken only by the distant sobs or the quiet murmur of supplications. Fear here is like the smoke from 100 chimneys. You breathe it in whether you want to or not, a constant reminder that danger is woven into the very fabric of daily life. In this world, faith is woven into every moment like a second skin. Before you begin your day, someone might cross themselves, a quick sign of the cross to ward off evil, as if the simple gesture could turn away the unseen spirits that threaten to invade their lives. People pray before eating, before working, before sleep, each prayer a fragile shield against the chaos of disease, famine, and war. Images of saints adorn every corner, painted on walls, carved into wooden icons, embroidered onto cloth, each one a silent guardian watching over the community. In the mornings, monks march through the streets, their voices rising in chants that echo off the stone walls, filling the air with melodies that seem to shake the very foundations of the earth. Churches are packed to overflowing, candles flickering in the dim light, casting long shadows that dance across the frescoed ceilings. The scent of burning incense wafts through the air, thick and sweet, almost medicinal, as if it could purify the very atmosphere of evil. Today you might scroll through TikTok for comfort, seeking distraction in endless videos and memes. Here, people clutch rosaries as if they were life jackets in a storm, tiny talismans against the chaos of impending doom. Superstitions are woven into everyday life like a second language. Amulets carved from bone or stone hang around necks or are hidden in pockets believed to ward off spirits or cure ailments. Herbs are gathered and blessed, their leaves pressed into tiny charms or burned as offerings to spirits that lurk unseen. Symbols painted on doorways or scratched into the dirt are meant to keep away malign forces, sometimes a simple spiraling line, sometimes a crude carving of a horned creature. Music fills the air as people sing songs to scare away spirits, loud, raucous, and sometimes downright strange. It's the medieval version of essential oils, except with a slightly higher chance of accidental poisoning. Some believe that carrying a dead toad in your pocket could ward off the plague, or that whipping yourself in the town square would earn divine mercy, though the latter often earned more stares of confusion than salvation. Fear here is an invisible thread binding everyone, sometimes uniting, sometimes dividing. The threat of the plague hangs over every conversation, every sneeze, every cough. Villagers speak in hushed tones about the miasma, that foul, rotten air that carries sickness like a predator stalking its prey. Rumors fly faster than ravens, whispering of witches and heretics who might be the source of every misfortune, accused and condemned with a flick of a hand or a whispered suspicion. Lynchings happen swiftly, often fueled by paranoia, as the community's collective fear turns into a mob's fury. Fugitives vanish into the woods, hiding from the watchful eyes of those convinced that evil lurks behind every smile. The fear is like a storm cloud hanging perpetually overhead, dark, heavy, and threatening to burst at any moment, yet somehow life persists beneath its shadow. And you, in the midst of all this, occupy a strange position. You are both a part of this world's fears and a potential remedy, yet also a symbol of uncertainty. To some, you are a healer, a divine instrument sent to stave off death, a beacon of hope amid despair. To others, you are a suspicious outsider, possibly a witch's accomplice, or worse, a carrier of the sickness you seek to cure. Their glances flicker with suspicion or reverence. Some whisper prayers when you approach, clutching charms or crosses as if they could shield them from your presence. Perhaps they see you as a guardian, or perhaps a threat, a walking reminder of mortality that they'd rather ignore. You catch glimpses of their thoughts in fleeting gestures, a quick prayer, a nervous glance, a quiet curse. Strange practices cling to their fears like cobwebs. Some believed that carrying a dead toad in your pocket could ward off the plague, a bizarre talisman that somehow promised protection. Others thought that whipping themselves in the town square, flogging their backs until they bled, would earn God's mercy and cleanse their sins, or at least distract the spirits. The superstition is woven into the fabric of their everyday lives, as natural as breathing. They burn strange herbs, mugwort, juniper, or sage, believing that the smoke drives away evil, though it's more likely to make your eyes water and your head spin. The air thickens with the scent of incense, mixed with the aroma of wood smoke and animal fat, creating a heady cocktail of fear and faith. Fear here is like the smoke from 100 chimneys. You breathe it in whether you want to or not, and it settles deep within you, coloring every thought and action. It unites and divides, creating a community that's always on edge. The villagers are ever alert, eyes darting for signs of trouble, whether it's the first sign of the plague, a whispered rumor of heresy, or the sight of a stranger passing through. They are bound by a collective anxiety, a shared dread that whispers in every prayer and every hurried movement. And yet, even amidst this atmosphere of constant worry, the community clings to its bonds. Beyond the prayers and charms, there are ties that keep life moving, fragile, human, and surprisingly familiar. People still reach for one another in times of need, offering a hand or a word of comfort. Mothers hush their children with lullabies, husbands hold their wives close, and friends share bread and ale in the taverns, trying to forget the shadows lurking just beyond sight. The community's fears are real, but so are their hopes. Hope that the saints will intervene, that the spirits will be appeased, and that the dark clouds will someday part. As you stand amidst this sea of superstition and faith, you realize that the fears are woven into every breath, every prayer, every whispered legend. They shape the very way these people see the world, both terrifying and strangely comforting. But even in a world heavy with fear, people still reached for one another, seeking solace in connection, in faith, in the simple act of surviving together. And beyond the fears, beyond the shadows of death and disease, they hold on to the fragile human bonds that make life worth living. Bonds that will carry them through the darkness, just as they always have. It's in the way neighbors share a crust of bread, passing it hand to hand through the cold air, or in the quick clasp of a shoulder when someone's face is streaked with tears. These bonds are the threads that hold their fragile tapestry together, woven through shared struggles and fleeting moments of joy. You see it in the crowded huts and longhouses where family life stretches across generations, grandparents, parents, children, all under the same roof, their lives intertwined in a complex web of obligation and affection. Forget modern family dramas here. Your cousin might sleep on the floor just 2 feet away from you every single night, the same as it's been for generations. The hearth's glow flickers over their faces as they share stories, the scent of roasted fish and wild herbs filling the air. But these bonds are not always simple. Family can also feel like a prison, obligations weigh heavy, and the roles are clear. The elder commands, the younger obey, and everyone bears the weight of tradition like a heavy cloak. Still, in this harsh world, friendship often blossoms in the cracks, small acts of kindness that shine brighter because they are so rare. You witness neighbors helping each other mend a roof, or sharing a bowl of porridge when the harvest was poor. A whispered piece of advice over a steaming mug of ale becomes a treasure, a reminder that even in the shadow of disease and death, solidarity survives. And then there are the whispers of love, secret glances exchanged behind the backs of watchful elders, promises made in the dark of night beneath the stars, or the furtive touch of hands caught in the market's chaos. Perhaps a young couple sneaks away to meet near the river, their hearts pounding louder than the rush of the water, hoping the gods will turn a blind eye. Or maybe it's just a quick smile across a smoky tavern where the fiddles play lively tunes and the air is thick with the smell of roasted meat and spilled ale. Your modern Tinder swipes. Here, it's a glance across a crowded hall, and if the fiddle doesn't break, maybe a dance, if the gods favor them that night. The web of social hierarchy shapes every relationship like the lines carved into a ship's hull. The noble lord's retinue might look down on you, the commoner, with a mixture of disdain and envy, while the village smith or the wise woman commands a different kind of respect, sometimes begrudging, sometimes genuine. The priest, with his long robes and solemn chants, holds a special place, respected for his connection to the divine, yet feared for his power to curse or bless, depending on his mood and the community's mood. You're always aware of your place in this hierarchy, whether you're a humble farmer, a traveling trader, or a chieftain's kin. And in the midst of all this, there are the grand gatherings, festivals, funerals, weddings, where the entire village comes alive. The scent of fresh bread and sweet mead fills the air as men and women don their best cloaks, embroidered with bright colors and intricate patterns. The sound of flutes and drums echoes through the fields, while the taste of honeyed fruits and roasted meats makes mouths water. You might find yourself caught in a dance, your hands cold, but your spirit warmed by the shared joy. Or you might stand at the edge, watching as the community weeps or rejoices, feeling the weight of their collective emotions, like a tide that lifts and pulls at your heart. Yet beneath this lively surface, rivalries simmer just below the skin, disputes over land, accusations of witchcraft, old grudges passed down through generations. You hear whispers in the marketplace, sharp words exchanged during village meetings, and sometimes even accusations hurled in the heat of anger. These conflicts remind you that social bonds, while vital, are fragile, easily torn by jealousy, greed, and fear. Your role in all this, perhaps as a healer, a judge, or an outsider passing through. People look at you with a mixture of hope and suspicion. Some see you as a savior, others as a witch's accomplice. When you tend to the sick or perform a ritual, the whispers follow you. Is he a blessing or a curse? They ask in hushed tones. You catch glimpses of their thoughts in fleeting looks. Some people clutch their loved ones tighter when you approach, as if your presence might bring either relief or ruin. In some villages, strange customs linger, like the belief that if you sneeze during a wedding, it's a sign the gods disapprove, unless a grandmother declares it a good omen, in which case everyone breathes a little easier. Or consider the community punishments, public shaming or even exile, sometimes more spectacle than justice, like a twisted version of a medieval reality show. They are a reminder that in this world, the bonds that tie people together are also the ones that can break with a single word or act. And so amid all these relationships, complex, fragile, and often unpredictable, you see how life persists. People still reach out, grasping for connection, for reassurance, for a sign that life's chaos isn't entirely without meaning. You understand that in this brutal, unforgiving landscape, the greatest strength comes not from swords or shields, but from the bonds forged between hearts, those quiet, unbreakable ties that make even the darkest night bearable. Because even in a world filled with ghosts of disease and death, these bonds are what truly keep the flame alive, flickering but never entirely extinguished. A simple cloth, worn and faded, covers a battered trencher of bread, its crust cracked and golden, emitting a warm, yeasty aroma that stirs your senses. Nearby, a shallow bowl holds a thin, steaming porridge, perhaps a mixture of barley and peas, its surface dotted with a sprinkling of coarse salt and a few sprigs of wild herbs. The air is filled with the faint scent of dried fish, a staple of daily life, mingling with the sharper notes of garlic and the earthy undertone of fermented vegetables. You feel the slight roughness of the wooden utensil, an iron spoon or a carved horn, resting comfortably in your hand, ready for the first taste of the day. The table is set with no fancy silverware, just simple, sturdy tools, a knife with a dull edge, a wooden spoon, and a mug of dark, cloudy ale or perhaps a weak, sour cider. The cloth beneath the bread is rough to the touch, and a small basin nearby waits to wash away the remnants of last night's meal, the water cool and slightly tinged with the earthy flavor of the well. The scene is modest, yet there's a quiet dignity in the way this daily ritual unfolds, a small act of nourishment that sustains body and spirit alike. Today's menu is humble but familiar. For most, it's a steady diet of pottage, thick, filling, and made from whatever grains and legumes are at hand, sometimes enriched with a piece of salted pork or a few dried beans. The bread, often dense and rye or barley-based, is a staple that hardens over time, but remains an essential part of every meal. Cheese, if available, is sliced thin, its salty tang a reminder of the curing process that took days or weeks. Eggs, perhaps from a neighbor's coop, are boiled or fried, their yolks like small, bright suns amidst the grey landscape of the meal. On days when fish is plentiful, caught from the river or brought in from the coast, it takes pride of place, smoked or salted, to preserve it through the long, harsh seasons. The drink is often a weak ale, cloudy and slightly sour, enough to quench thirst, but not to cloud the mind. Water drawn from the well has a taste of iron and earth, a reminder that even the most basic necessity is tied to the land's patience and patience's limits. In the houses of the common folk, breakfast is a quiet affair, sometimes shared in the flickering warmth of a hearth, sometimes eaten alone before the day's labor begins. There's no formal grace or elaborate prayer, just a brief nod to the spirits or gods, a simple thank you passed from one to another as the first bites are taken. The ritual is practical, almost mechanical, fitting for a life where hunger is a constant companion and scarcity can strike without warning. But in the halls of the noble, the scene shifts. The table is broader, laden with roasted meats, perhaps a pig or a fat goose, spiced with expensive pepper or saffron, their rich aroma filling the room. Fine bread, baked in the oven and crusted with a caramelized glaze, is sliced with a silver knife. The goblets are filled with wines, possibly a dark, sweet mead or a red wine imported from distant lands. Each sip a small luxury, a taste of wealth and status. The noble's table is a stage where etiquette and ceremony are as important as the food itself. A blessing uttered before the meal, the careful serving of each course, and a strict hierarchy observed in the order of eating. Servants move quietly, their footsteps light on the wooden floors, as they bring out delicacies and refill goblets, all under the watchful eyes of their lord or lady. Across the land, the act of eating is more than sustenance. It's a ritual, a statement of rank, a moment of community, or even a display of power. In the marketplace, vendors shout their prices, barrels of ale, freshly baked loaves, smoked fish, each item with its own story, its own history of effort and hope. The baker's oven crackles as he kneads dough, the scent of warm bread spilling into the busy streets, tempting passers-by. The fishmonger's stall is a chaotic splash of scales and salt, the air heavy with the pungent aroma of dried and salted catch. Even the humble ingredients carry weight. They are tokens of survival, symbols of how people carve life out of the land and sea, shaping their days around the availability of food. Eating in this world is an act of resilience. Scarcity teaches patience and cleverness, reusing bones for broth, turning leftovers into new meals, drying and salting what cannot be eaten fresh. Waste is a sin, but not in the modern sense, rather a missed opportunity, a loss of what could sustain the next day or season. The taste of salt, the chew of dried meat, the sharp tang of vinegar, all serve as reminders that hunger sharpens the senses, making every flavor, every texture more vivid. The simple act of breaking bread is a silent conversation with the land, a humble acknowledgement that life depends on the bounty of soil and sea. After the last crumb is eaten or the last sip swallowed, the community begins to stir again, ready for the next act. The day's labor calls, but so does the evening's promise. And as the shadows lengthen, the town's life moves from the quiet, earthy rituals of the table to the lively streets where music, laughter, and the crackle of fires await. You can almost hear it, the faint jingle of a minstrel's lute, the hum of voices raised in song, the distant clatter of mugs and plates, all hinting at the pleasures to come. Because in this world, food and drink are more than nourishment. They are the threads that weave the fabric of community, the shared moments that turn simple sustenance into stories, into bonds that hold everyone together, even as the night falls and the darkness presses close. You step away from the rough-hewn table, the faint glow of dusk casting long shadows over the cobblestone streets. The air carries a mixture of warm beer, damp wooden floors, and the faint, sweet scent of sweat mingling with the smoky aroma drifting from nearby fires. Lanterns flicker, their light bouncing off the uneven walls of the houses and taverns, creating a dance of shadow and glow. As you walk into the open, the town breathes a different life, the collective pulse of shared joy and quiet anticipation. The streets hum with low voices, laughter held back by a sense of reverence, as if the night itself holds its breath in the presence of festivity. You find yourself approaching the bustling tavern, its door swinging open to reveal a space alive with movement and noise. Inside, the benches wobble under the weight of revelers. The wooden floor groans softly as the crowd shifts. A rough-hewn bar runs along one side, dark and streaked with the marks of countless nights. The air is thick with the scent of warm ale, the faint dust of spilled grain, and the sweet, smoky aroma of roasted meats. Men and women lean close, their voices rising and falling in a familiar rhythm, exchanging stories, bets, and jokes. The clink of metal mugs and the scrape of dice on rough tables fill the space, punctuated by bursts of raucous laughter. A game of nine men's Morris is underway, pieces moving with a slow, deliberate patience, each throw of the dice like a promise of luck, though often the roll tumbles just as predictably as a bill due at month's end. On a corner, a fiddler strums a lively tune, his fingers dancing over the strings with a careless joy, while a tambourine player taps out a steady beat that resonates through your bones. You see a circle forming, simple steps traced in the dirt floor, feet stamping, women and men joining in, their laughter rising like a wave. Some sway, others clap, their faces shining with the sweat of effort and merriment, an honest celebration of life's fleeting pleasures. The music is imperfect, out of tune in places, too loud or too soft, but it weaves a tapestry of warmth and shared vulnerability, binding everyone in a moment of collective breath. Beyond the music, a small stage or a cleared patch of ground hosts a different kind of spectacle, an enactment, perhaps a morality play, or a miracle story. The costumes are crude, patched cloaks, painted faces, makeshift crowns, but the gestures are earnest. Actors recite lines with reverence or humor, slipping between the sacred and the mundane, their voices rising and falling with the rhythm of the tale. Sometimes the crowd joins in, reciting familiar verses, their voices echoing in unison. The story unfolds amidst the flickering glow of candles and torches, illuminating faces lit with curiosity or quiet reverence. When a miracle is staged, perhaps a healer's blessing or a saint's intervention, the audience watches with a mixture of hope and skepticism, caught between belief and the knowing that all stories are stitched from the fabric of shared tradition. As the night deepens, the town's mood shifts subtly. The darker corners host a different kind of gathering, those who follow the old ways or the more intense religious rites. Flagellants, cloaked in rough cloth, march in slow procession, their whips cracking softly against their backs, calling down blessings or curses depending on who watches. Their chants rise, a steady, hypnotic rhythm that cuts through the merriment, reminding everyone, sometimes with a shiver, that the shadows of fear and penance are never far. A few stop to watch, eyes wide or contemplative, as the flagellants' procession passes, their somber faces illuminated by flickering torchlight. The superstitions cling tight. Some believe the dance of fire and pain can ward off evil, while others cross themselves and whisper prayers. Amidst all this, your role as healer, if you wear that mantle, remains quietly present. People glance at you with a mixture of respect and trepidation. Your reputation is woven into the fabric of their fears and hopes. A whispered plea for a quick blessing, a touch on the shoulder to ward off ill omens. They seek your silent reassurance. You lift your hand, touching the edge of the roof or the worn stone wall, as if to brush away the dark whispers of misfortune, offering a quiet prayer or a simple gesture of protection. Even amid the revelry, your presence keeps the fragile boundary between joy and dread intact, a reminder that life's cycle is always turning silently and inexorably. The night is a tapestry of contrasts, laughter and silence, light and shadow, hope and caution. The dance of the townsfolk challenges the darkness, their steps a defiant heartbeat against the night's quiet threat. The distant toll of the village bell, slow and deliberate, reminds you that all stories, no matter how lively or sacred, are woven from the same thread: birth, promise, and inevitable departure. Between one song and the next, the town's collective breath whispers softly, "Everything begins and ends here, in this fleeting moment of shared existence." And as the last notes fade and the shadows deepen, you sense that in this cycle, this dance of life and death, every celebration is a quiet prayer, and every prayer a silent vow to keep moving forward, even when the darkness presses close. Outside, the wind whispers softly through the cracks, carrying the scent of dried herbs and earth, a gentle reminder that life's cycle spins quietly on, whether we notice or not. Before you, memories drift like distant echoes: birth, promise, farewell, each a thread woven into the fabric of time. You picture the newborn's first cry, a tiny bell announcing the beginning of a journey. The midwife's hands, warm and swift, wrapping the fragile life in rough cloth, whispering a prayer that mingles with the breath of the dawn. The small, trembling figure, loved yet fragile, becomes part of the world's unending rhythm, a reminder that even in the smallest moments there is awe. Then comes the union, the joining of two lives embraced beneath the arch of a humble church. The community gathers, fingers intertwined with ribbons, a slice of bread and a pinch of salt passed between them. The air hums with a brief song, a melody that carries promises made in the presence of witnesses. The clasp of hands, the exchange of tokens, each a symbol of hope, of shared paths, stitching two stories into one. Life's work follows. The passing of craft and tradition from elder to apprentice, the worn bench bearing the marks of countless stories, the objects handed down, an ancient knife, a carved spindle, a simple pot, each carrying the weight of generations. The voice of the old one offers quiet counsel, a gentle reminder that every skill, every lesson, is part of the ongoing dance of survival. But then shadows deepen. The sickbed appears, a humble pallet, a cloth damp with the sweat of suffering. The unction, the murmured prayers, sometimes hurried, sometimes omitted, are all that remains when the plague's dark hand strikes. The silence that follows is heavy, the rites incomplete, as hope flickers like a faint candle in a cold room. If you are the healer, your touch is steady, your presence a quiet dignity amidst despair. You see the fear in their eyes, but also a fragile trust, a recognition that even in the face of death, compassion is a light no darkness can fully extinguish. As the final breath leaves, the church bell tolls, a deep, mournful sound that echoes through the stillness, marking the end of a story. The procession is short, a line of figures cloaked in dark, carrying the body to its resting place. The earth is cold under your feet as they lay the departed in a common grave, a simple mound marked by a stone, or left unmarked, yet honored in silent prayer. Their names are spoken softly at the table, a remembrance that no life is forgotten, no story truly ends. The icons of humility, faint images painted in faded frescoes, skulls reminding all of mortality, stand silent witness to the truth that life and death are but two sides of the same coin. The sacred texts whisper of a time to be born and a time to die, a cycle as natural as the seasons turning, each phase a gift, each departure a part of the greater whole. As you close your eyes, the familiar sensations comfort you, the coolness of the linen, the faint aroma of soap and dried flowers, the roughness of the woven blanket, the warmth of your hand resting on the pillow. You breathe in slowly, each breath a testament to the continuity of existence. Every loaf broken, every cup raised in quiet toast, every smile shared in fleeting moments forms a silent prayer, a gentle acknowledgement that life's miracle is in its fleeting beauty. And so, as the candle's flame dwindles to a flicker and the shadows grow long, you feel a peaceful stillness settle over your heart. The city outside continues its quiet rhythm, the world turning softly, unhurried, unbroken. The night deepens, and with it, the gentle assurance that in each ending there is also a beginning, an eternal dance of birth and farewell. Now close your eyes. The candle dims further, but the warmth remains. Rest softly, for the city continues, and you too are part of this endless, beautiful cycle.